You know where you are!
This is Appetite for Distortion.
Welcome to the podcast Appetite for Distortion, episode number 454. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Kerry King. How are you, sir?
That's a good number, man. One of my favorite engines.
Well, that's why I picked it. That's why I picked it, just for you. Where are you phoning in from, if you don't mind me asking?
New York City.
Oh, okay. So I'm in Queens. We're not too far away, but you never know. Question with the fantastic new solo album that's coming out, Hell I Rise, because I've been privy to and able to listen to it all right away. But of course, the singles are out now: Idle Hands, Residue. When you're coming up, because the riffs, whether you're a Slayer fan or not, the riffs are undeniably awesome. When you're coming up with a riff, what's the process for you? Is it the sound? Is it a feeling? How did you come up with the riffs, I guess, for this record?
Very business as usual. It'll be funny for people to hear that I still make up music and practice here in an amp about the size of my boot, record on my phone, and streamline it till it becomes a song. And when it does become a song, send it to Paul, and then start thinking about drums. But it's just got to have a vibe. Like, I sit there. I don't usually. I have planned out things and said, I want to do this, and set out to do this and done it. There's a song called Shrapnel on this album that I did that. But usually I'm just, messing around on the guitar, keeping my fingers in shape, and just out of the blue, they'll come up and this riff will come flying out of my hands. I'm like, well, I better record that before I forget it. And that's how a lot of songs start out.
Right on. And obviously when you were putting this project together, this solo band, so many people because you played with so many people want to play with you. What was the process to finalizing the lineup and who made it onto the record?
It wasn't real difficult. First and foremost, all my A-list said yeah. So I never had to go to plan B. And if there was a plan B, it would have been great people as well. But I'm glad I got these guys, because most of us go back decades and decades. Me and Kyle have known each other since 2015, so not quite a decade, but, I got quality dudes, and the most important thing to me was to get dudes I was friends with for a long time. We just played Welcome to Rockville a few days ago, and after the gig, we had a van ride, hour and a half van ride, and we're just, everybody's picking a song, we're going down the line and playing music everybody loves, having a drink, and just having fun after a show, and it was really bonding's an odd word, but yeah, we haven't been together that long. We've only been playing together for a couple of weeks, so it was cool to have a good time, have a fun time after a show, and we got a show in 2 days, and we're going to go kill it.
I love it, and I'm seeing just great reviews. You mentioned Welcome to Rockville, but just, starting out as a new band when you're already an established person, I can't imagine that kind of feeling. Is there excitement or anxiety when you're kind of not going back to the beginning, but you're kind of you're building something from the ground up, even though, again, you're already established?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. From our first show at Reggie's in Chicago, it was a full-blown warm-up show. It was definitely only like 400 people, but it was rad, Nobody's got a chance to see me in a venue like that for 25, 30 years, maybe longer. It was cool to have that vibe. And I was very humbled to get these offers from, these American festivals, the European festivals, and being reasonably high on some of the bills with no one knowing who's in my band, no one hearing a note of music I played. So I felt very humbled by that and excited, because everybody that believed in me, when this comes out, they're going to say, yeah, I was right.
Yeah, that's an awesome feeling and well-deserved. I wish I had you here for longer, but I got to get this question in before I get out of here. You may have heard Appetite for Distortion, name of the podcast. I use a Guns N' Roses theme, the 6 degrees of GNR Bacon, as I like to call it. So I was hoping that maybe you could talk about Slash a little bit as a guitar player, and also maybe how you bonded over horror. Because if I'm not mistaken, you guys have done some. I think it was like Kurt Hammett's like horror expo or something like that you and him were on the panel. So maybe if you could talk about Slash a little bit, and maybe your feelings on when Appetite came out, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, Appetite, when that came out, it was even then you knew immediately that was a classic rock record, hard rock record that's going to be around until the end of time, and it has. It's a great debut record. When Slash, there was a time, not a happy time, it was a sad time. We were at Dime's induction to the Rock Walk. And I was telling my wife, I said, hey, I'm going to go meet Slash. I haven't met Slash before. And I walk up to Slash. You don't know this. I walked up to Slash, and I stuck out my hand. He said, hey, Kerry, how you been? And I went, fine. So apparently we had met, and I was probably drunk and forgot about it.
Oh, that's funny.
I remember all the times I've seen him now. We hang out at festivals, trying to make sure we say hello if we're in the same festival and stuff. Even though we could be on different stages, I would always, to this day, I would look out at least to say hey to Slash.
That's cool. Yeah, no, I like that, especially, because I want to say it's two different genres, because it's all, I look at it, it's all rock and roll, it's great, but to see the kind of mutual respect between two different styles, I think is special. One last question before I get you out of here, and I know it's silly and I apologize. Do you remember the first time, because it's become a thing, when people, they still come up to you on the street and go, Slayer? Do you remember the first time?
All the time, dude.
Sure.
All the time.
Does that, do you remember the first time when that became a thing?
I think it was in New York. Yeah, I think it was in New York. I couldn't tell you where, but there was a time me and Jeff were walking down the street, probably going to record stores way back then. And I think somebody, it's kind of like how I just said Slash, somebody said, Jeff Hanneman? And I look at Jeff, I'm like, hey, that wasn't me, dude. So somebody recognized him, us, wanted autographs. That was one of the first times. But, yeah, I do believe it was New York, but I couldn't tell you the instance exactly.
No worries. Well, Kerry, congratulations on the record, and I look forward to hearing more from you solo. So I hope we get to do this again.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. Count on it.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Cheers, man.
Short but sweet from Kerry King. Nothing wrong with that. And you may know, if you're an avid listener of the podcast, I get these short interviews through my job at Premier Radio Networks, iHeartRadio, because we put on these radio tours. So that was one of, I think, maybe 15 Kerry is doing today, and I get my own slot sometimes, because it wasn't at the beginning when I started this podcast. I was just it was a passion project, but over the years that I get picked up by news outlets, that, I'm saying the numbers of episodes now, and it's become a thing where the guest they act impressed. And I feel like, okay, yeah, I guess that is impressive, because I've had the commitment. And why have I had the commitment? Well, it's because of you. Yes, it's because I get certain opportunities to talk to my rock heroes, but it's you listening that's supporting and encouraging me, which is why I've been able to continue to do this as we're pushing slowly but surely towards 500 episodes. So that's why it's short. It's meant for morning radio, afternoon radio, but I want an opportunity to talk to Kerry. And it's interesting, and as I peel back the wall a little bit, and we'll see, is this going to be my monologue segment as I kind of talk to you a bit? So yeah, let's do the my monologue soundbite. Monologue. I tell you a lot of behind the scenes stuff because I think I'm interested in it. Before even radio, I like to see behind the scenes of what happens in radio and TV and movies. It just gives you a different perspective, because what you're seeing, what you're hearing is never the full story. It never is. So that's why I enjoy telling you these kind of things. So, because otherwise I can just do 7 minutes with Kerry King and say nothing. Why do I have to tell you all about it? Well, the reason is because people ask, how do I get interviews? Well, sometimes it happened early on in the beginning with Scotto, like when we just on Twitter, X, whatever, contacted Charlie Benanti and Dave Kushner, and they said yes. That happens. But now, like when I've had Scott Ian on and Frank Bello from Anthrax, that's gone through a PR department. So it depends. And it's interesting, that same PR department, I'm friendly with somebody there, that also represents Kerry King, and we were talking about it. And she's like, yeah, maybe we can get you, Kerry King, but you never know with their management because they see a Guns N' Roses thing, what you're going to talk about. I'm like, all right, let's see whatever works out. And it ended up working out that they're working with my boss to do this. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Let me just get my 7 minutes. No big deal. It's no big deal. I don't need to maybe push for a separate interview that's 15, 20 minutes, maybe even half an hour. Maybe another time that'll do that. This just seemed to work for everybody. Let's just do a quick 7 minutes. And I tell you that because that same person also represents Dirty Honey. And this person's been great, getting me repeated. I've had Mark LaBelle on a few times. I have had their guitarist on as well. And they've also offered me tickets to go see Dirty Honey when they're in New York City. And I really have to pick and choose what concerts I go to for physical reasons and baby reasons now. Another short, if you're not aware, I have a neurological disability. I wear leg braces. I use a cane to get around. Actually, when I'm in my apartment, when I'm not wearing my leg braces, so primarily every day, I have a walker at home. So I use a walker, or I'm holding on, like I'm parkouring on the walls, holding myself up. I just have really bad balance and really bad strength in my legs. So when I go to concerts, I use a wheelchair. I've been doing that maybe for like the last, since I think it was a lesson learned when I went to go see Guns N' Roses at in Austin for ACL, was it Austin City Limits, that it was just too difficult for me. So last time I saw Buckethead, when I'm going to go see Slash this summer, wheelchair, it's a relief. It really is, because I'm just worried about falling the entire time. And I tell you this again, as full as just transparency. Because sometimes I'll say to the guest, oh, I would love to see you when you're live, and I don't want to sound like I'm full of shit. I would love to go to all these concerts now, but it's difficult physically. And now with the baby, we got to kind of coordinate, which he's coming with us to Slash. We say that, knock on wood. I mean, he should be fine. He's gone to concerts before, thanks to my wife and Dave Matthews. Anyway, so this person, again, represents Dirty Honey. And you may remember I told you a story where I was once blocked from interviewing Dirty Honey when they came through my job because they had just come off a tour with Slash, and that was too close to what they were promoting, something different at the time. So they see Appetite for this Distortion, and they think all I want to do is talk about Guns N' Roses and Slash, or they just have it's just the name alone just kind of brings up raises an eyebrow, and that's enough for them to say no. Now, since then, obviously, so I got a no the first time. Again, since then, I've obviously interviewed Dirty Honey. Now, that person who said no is the same person who said no to Duff a few years ago. And that person, when it comes to my job, I'm never, whether it was through my job or not, I'm never going to get angry. I can be disappointed. I can question it, being like, try to follow up and be like, what can I do to make this happen this time or next time? Is there anything I can answer or clarify? Is there anything I can do? But with the Duff one, you may remember, I think I may have read the email on a podcast. And again, I'm bringing this up to get to a point, to bring up Slash, because you see him doing a ton of interviews now. So at that time, I wrote a long email because it was confirmed with me, Duff. And then I get one the day of saying that it was canceled. And that really, and to this day, kind of just makes me like sad. Like almost, and I never blame Duff, or it's just a whole management thing. We all talk about Team Brazil and why Guns N' Roses doesn't do a lot of interviews, especially Axl. It's not just them. I already spoke to you about the Iron Maiden radio representative that makes me cut stuff for my interviews because they're afraid of clickbait. So I'm giving you a behind the scenes of just this overall viewpoint that a lot of people have. And I think it's going to help you as fans understand why some interviews happen, why they don't, why some interviews are just like, you'll listen to them and then there's just nothing there. It's just like a whole just a promotional. What it is, it's just a promotional thing. There's really nothing of substance to it, which is, again, a whole conversation. Those are needed, but sometimes it's like, well, why does this person never get asked hard questions? Or, I mean, there's a whole lot of variables surrounding, which I've told you about over the years, why I'm bringing this up now, and I'm bringing it up again, because I don't want to keep bringing it up. It's like it's getting to a point where this time around, just kind of sad, really making me. It's a combination of being frustrated and being a little embarrassed, if I'm going to be fully transparent with you. So, to give you exactly what I've heard and why I have this thought process, so I'll paraphrase the email, because this isn't going to be like Baby Reindeer, where I'm going to out somebody, or I'm going to give you like a, hey, this is not representative of this person, but I tell you about this person and you end up doing your own research and finding them. No. I don't want any of that. So the first time around was like, I appreciate your candor responding to my email. So I'm going to respond to you in kind and just let you know what's going on. I have no doubt that you would do a good interview and be very respectful, but the Appetite for Distortion name is a non-starter. It's like if you went to a Chinese restaurant that said food poisoning, would you do that? And how do I get that out of my head? I mean, this is going on since Tenderness was released. So I haven't got, that's what this person sees my podcast as, food poisoning. And was maybe explained a little bit more with the slash. So I said it on social media because I just had to, because again, Slash is doing all these interviews. So many of you say to me, oh, maybe we'll get Slash this year, so when he's promoting this and this and not talking about guns, and it gets my hopes up too. I'm like, maybe this is the year. Maybe this is going to happen. Well, I had like my weekly meeting with my bosses, with my boss and my team, and before I can even knew about it, he said, Brandon, Slash is coming in. Well, he did Zoom. It didn't come in, but we're getting Slash. I asked for you. I'm sorry. They said no. They just said no. And that was really all I was told. And he's like, I don't understand it. Well, we'll keep trying, in the future. I'm like, okay, I really didn't know. I'm like, does Slash see my name? Am I person non grata in the GNR camp? Because Slash years ago let me interview his son. But over the years, have I said something wrong? Am I coming off a certain way? I actually reached out to, and not to out anybody else in a good way, but I reached out to a former guest who's close with Slash, and I said, hey, look, I understand if you don't want to come on the show anymore and not talk to me. If there's something going on, it's bummed me out. I don't know why I'm getting denied interviews, because I'm not going to ask the hard questions. I know he's promoting the Blues show. I'm going this summer with my son. This person's like, no, we're fine. He's like, I'm sorry, I haven't been able to respond because I'm like to your last DM because I've been busy. I feel like I've regressed back mentally, and I'm talking to when I'm like was trying to meet a girl and get close with a girl, and you just overthink everything, and you think maybe, oh, why haven't they texted me back? And all these things are going through your head. Like it sucks that I can still have my self-esteem can still be reverted back to middle school Brandon that quickly sometimes. And I take these things too personally sometimes, and I admit it. I like to think I've gotten better, because since then I'm married with a kid, so obviously I've been able to control my self-esteem to a degree. But still, it's there. And this is something else I want to be transparent with you about, because there's a lot of you who also deal with self-esteem issues. And when I talk about mental health and addiction, these are things I want to relate to you on. I never want to come off as a holier than thou interviewer. Oh, look at me, I'm so cool, I'm interviewing Kerry King. That's not me. That'll never be me, ever. So it's always funny when people think that about me, if I have an ego. Or I've gotten a few ones recently that like, oh, you have such an influence. And my brother said that, and my wife said this recently to me too, teasing, oh, you're an influencer now. Please don't ever call me that. The only people I want to influence are my younger brothers and my son. That's it. When I talk to you, I'm just telling you my opinion and my feelings as a fan. I'm one fan to another. You're a fan listening. I just happen to work in radio. happened to start a podcast. This is a fan, by a fan, for fans, that just happens to work in radio. That's all this is. I will take pride in those of you who said, I've heard you talking about that you haven't had a drink in 8.5 years, or you talk about therapy, and that's inspired me to. That stuff is great. That is also part of the reason why I talk up about certain things, because I know I've needed that at times, to hear somebody else just to say that, and to say that I'm not alone, that I can do this. So that stuff is cool. So just thinking about all these things going on, like, why couldn't I interview? Like, I'm such a mental health advocate. It's just what's really preventing this from happening. So I'm going to read you, again, this person's email without giving you the person's name, because again, and I'm not going to, it's not a baby reindeer situation, but I'll read you what I wrote. Oh, what I wrote is basically what I've said to you. So I'm not going to bother you with what I wrote, but it's the same thing, that I thought this person saw me in a different light, because I've been able to interview Dirty Honey, Miles Kennedy. This is somebody else who he works with. And again, this is just somebody who's part of the whole machine. This is more of like the radio rep, and then there's PR people, there's actual management. So this is kind of like a radio rep that works for a management company. And this is not Guns N' Roses. So this is just, that's all I can really say about it. So I just said, hey, I know I'm not going to talk about Guns N' Roses. I'm taking my son to Pier 17 this summer to see his show. I'm going in a wheelchair. I want to review it so I hope you just trust me one day. And you tell me, okay? Because I never want to be delusional. You tell me. He writes back, Brandon, I'm a bit taken aback by this. So I don't know if I offended this guy, or he was just really caught off guard because I spilled my guts to him, being like, come on. Like, and it's not begging for an interview, because that makes me sick. If I ever begged for something and I got something, what kind of interview is that? Like, it's like a hostage situation. That would embarrass me. But it's more of just like, please, like, why don't you trust me? If I'm getting to a situation where I've earned it, why are you taking it away from me? It's kind of how I feel. He goes, I know the title of your podcast is a tongue-in-cheek play on the GNR album, but you are personalizing something that isn't personal. This has nothing to do with the line of questioning you may or may not have undertaken. There was a specific direction on the radio tour not to mention any of Slash's bands, Velvet, Guns, or Miles and the Conspirators. By the way, not just this guy's rules, just with Kerry King right now, and no fault of his, said he really just wants to focus on the new band, not so much Slayer. If he brings it up, great, but just focus on... This has been with everybody. This is nothing wrong what they're saying, because I'm telling you, so many DJs in my position will just talk to them about what they want to talk about and leave the things that they're promoting at towards the end and do a bad job of it. So there's nothing wrong with somebody saying, hey, just please focus this on this and this, not this. So that's totally cool. So he goes, it might be a value to you to look at this from the other side. In my head, I'm thinking I already am, but okay. Slash outside GNR is a different thing. As I explained to so-and-so, somebody within my department, if you want to do the radio tour interview with Slash for what's called, I could do it for my job's prep service. So something what I do work on, we offer for morning shows and people who want to pay for it. There are news clips, sound clips, edited interviews where you can pretend to interview somebody. There are things like that. So I could have interviewed him for basically stock answers for this website. And if a drop or two made it onto my podcast, that would be different. So he did say that. But to actually schedule something with Slash for an outlet called Appetite for Distortion was something that I 100% could not do. In a general sense, if there was any chance that any artists I represent might question a decision that I am making on their behalf, it's simply a line that I will not cross. I have been in a few situations like this, and it's not comfortable. You could have taken the slot from Premiere, but I'm not aware of... Okay, so basically, I could have taken that. It wasn't offered to me. That's besides the point. I didn't know if that was a thing. And he says it does not amend the slight to your podcast in any way or any support that you may get from your colleagues. It's just an isolated instance to Slash based upon the podcast name. We've gone over this. This is why you've been able to speak to some of the other artists we manage. So he's like, I don't know anybody who wouldn't be supportive and champion the same things that you do. I hope to shed some clarity on this, and I hope you understand. So those are things I do understand, and we've spoken about before, and I thought we were past. So I just let you know what paraphrase my response, saying that I apologize if you thought it was an attack, because that was like the kind of taken aback thing. Because it's not an attack. It's more of like, I'm just venting. I'm just like breathing out. I'm sighing. I'm like, come on, man. Like, give me a reason I can really grasp. So I said, you've always actually been nice to me and honest with your reasoning. He responds to me. He doesn't have to, so thank you, which is all true. He can just completely ignore me and say, fuck this guy. I hope he doesn't think that now. He said, and it's true. If he's had negative experiences with any artist questioning his decision, in this case Slash, then okay, of course. His job is more important than my interview. Obviously, I say that, not him. I'm saying that. However, I'm thinking if you have a good relationship with your artist, you can say, hey, I know about the name, but I can completely confirm that this guy is legit. And you will be asked nothing but questions about just on the blues. Maybe a dinosaur question. Like, I don't understand why that little note can't be put in there, and why that is Slash so much of a diva, which he's not. Would that throw him off? So to me, I'm just thinking like that, in my opinion, and I didn't say this to him, that means you just don't have the best relationship, I guess, or just casual relationship with your artist. If you can't say that, because to me, that's a simple fix. If you really believed in me, you could say, hey, this guy's legit. Don't worry about the name. It's tongue-in-cheek. He's got it. Don't worry. But he doesn't say that. And I said, well, I'm like, honestly, my disappointment is just wondering if it'll ever happen. And this is the truth. I'm telling this to you, and I'm telling this to you for those who have seen my post. This is not, I never expected, starting this podcast with Scotto in 2016, I did not expect any interviews, ever. Scotto was like, oh, it's all about the interviews. I'm like, who the hell are we going to get? We're just two like low-level radio people. We're not going to get anybody good. And again, here we are years later, Alice Cooper, Dave Mustaine, Dee Snider, Kerry King right now. So many names. I've just been so fucking fortunate in every single time. That's why you hear me nervous. That's why you hear me being like, oh, thank you for your time. Every time I'm so friggin' grateful for it. Every single one. Even when you come on the podcast to review shows, I'm so grateful that I have listeners that actually give a shit about what I do and follow me on social media. So grateful for it. But I'm at a point where, like, if I, like what I told you about with Kat Benzova a few years ago, about she said she would do the interview if I was on another platform, not Appetite. I've heard that from other people, and it sounds like the same thing here. But it's this thing that I built out of nothing. That's, if I did any other podcast, would I've gotten to this level, air quote, so to speak. So it really has become a double-edged sword. Do I change the name of my podcast? I can't do that. I've already branded the Brando at this point. So I'm just wondering if it's ever going to happen. So it's just my nature of just wanting to earn something the right way. I let him know I didn't know about the option to interview Slash for my prep website, but I would have been conflicted. You tell me. It would have been nice to talk to Slash, just like if I happened to work that tour. I ended up working the tour that day, and the universe was funny with me. Bonnie Bartlett Daniels, who's a 95-year-old actress. You probably have seen her face. She was in St. Elsewhere. She's actually married to the real-life Mr. Feeney, the actor, what's his name? Daniels. Why am I forgetting? William Daniels, the voice of Knight Rider and Kit. So I was working her tour instead of Slash's that day. The universe was kind of teasing me, but I thought it was funny. But if I worked the interview with Slash's tour, it would have been cool to talk to him, I guess, on Zoom, sure. But if I interviewed him and and nobody heard it, does a tree fall if a tree falls in the forest, what is that? I don't know. I don't know what that means. And you're coming along with me on this ride. What does that mean for you? I want us, if we're going to get that victory, we all should share in that. That's just I don't know. I don't want a roundabout way of doing it. I was like, I wasn't going to be like, what about Appetite for Horror? Let me bring that out of retirement or out of hiatus to interview Slash. I don't want to. It's got to be done the right way, I'm thinking. So like I said, I'm going to keep hope, as is my nature. Just thanks for taking the time to write back. I'm just going to try to take things not so personally, but that's my life. I do everything in my life. I take it personally, unfortunately. So I'm just telling you all of this now because I don't want to keep bringing it up, because I don't want it to become... I mean, it's already a thing in my head. It's a thing, when I talk to my therapist, it's a thing. I vent to my wife about it, because it's an embarrassment being, look at everybody else interviewing him. It's smaller podcasts, and it's just, they're having fun. And it's like, man, that could be me. I could have a great interview with Slash, and I'm being denied because of my podcast name, not because of who I am, not because of how I'm an interview. It's just there's always something, and I could offer, just like with the Iron Maiden management. Hey, you know what? You heard this interview before it was posted. You don't want this in there? Fine, I'll take it out. Whatever. If you were really unhappy with it. So I don't know. I'm gonna always keep my hope up, because you and I both know that Slash and Duff are gonna work. Whatever happens with Guns N' Roses, that's to be determined. But Slash and Duff are gonna be making music or doing something until they die. So that means I'm never gonna get an interview with them every time. It's so, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But that doesn't mean it's always gonna make me sad as a fan, and what it would do for us and the show and the victory that this being. I'm so grateful. I've had a couple haters lately that I find it funny. We're like, people don't really like you. They talk shit about you. If they do, I don't see it. That's nice. So I guess I should ignore all the wonderful DMs that I get and the positive messages that I get and the support that I get from my GNR forum. I didn't ask for my podcast to have its own section up there. They did it for them. They do it. They do it. So if there's a section of people who don't like me, good for you. Good for you. Don't listen anymore. I don't want people who don't get it. I don't want you coming along for this podcast night train that so many of us have put work into. You put work into this just like I have. You've been coming along, suggesting guests to me, questions, being my guest co-host at times. This is our project. So I can only say, to kind of end here, the end of my monologue, to kind of end my rant, because I don't want this to become a thing. I thought this was over when I did the episode with Rick Dunsford a year or so ago about don't ban me, and that was directed towards GNR management, being like, hey, if Melissa wants to come on the podcast, please, I don't have to ask her about new music. If don't block her, and if it's something that I did or said, can you just communicate to me and let me know, and I can accept it and move on? Hey, Brando, I don't like you when you criticize. I don't even know. I don't even think I've gone that up and in. I'm not making fun of the merch. Oh, maybe I'm like, there's all this news about Guns N' Roses, and I'm getting emails about merch. Okay, is that the worst thing that I've ever said? Was that enough to get me blocked? At least let me know. And if you don't respect me enough, and maybe that's why I don't get responded. So I'm gonna keep letting you know, because it's gonna keep coming up. Slash is gonna keep doing stuff. Duff is going to keep doing stuff. Axel, he now has not only a website, but an official YouTube channel. What is he doing? Is it a book? I saw a very interesting theory the other day that said this is kind of management 101 as far as if you want to change what you look like online, as far as your reputation management. That's what I'm saying. Reputation. So if you go to like a reputation management, I've seen commercials for it, and there's a lot of things bad about you online. There are companies that try to fix that. So one of the ways to do that is to develop a really good online social presence. So could it be because of that? I don't know. I think that's an interesting theory. We'll have to wait and see, as they say in Estranged. So as long as these things keep coming up, I got to keep talking about it. That's what this podcast is. Getting through all the distortion. That's where distortion comes from. It's getting through all the noise, and I'm giving it to you straight. giving it to you straight, as honest as I can, because that's the only way I've always wanted to do radio. Back when I started in news, back in high school, writing for the paper. I don't want to put on a performance. I don't want to mislead people for clicks. I just want to tell you the truth. So when I see a hater talking about clickbait, I'm like, you don't know what that is, man, if you think that's what I'm doing. If I repost something with clickbait, it's because they have my interview quoted accurately and credited accurately. What they do with the headline, I can't. That's their job. But you're still getting the truth. And it's something worth clicking on if I repost it, because you're just reading my interview at the end of the day instead of listening. Like, oh, this is a cool interview Brando did. I could read some, and they'll scroll down, and usually a YouTube link will be posted, and it'll be great. So it's just really funny. So I feel like just a little bit of attacked lately with just like a one or two hater that's just, and I'm crazy enough again to remember. I remember the haters. It takes a lot for me to accept the positive. It really does. It takes a long time for me to accept if I'm good at something, if I'm doing the right thing. So believe me, I look for the negative. And if I look for the negative and I'm not seeing a lot, and you're just trying to be negative, I laugh it off. It's like, what are you doing? You can sound like a teenager who's mad that I'm not accepting your point of view. I can agree to disagree. If you can't, that's on you, bud. That's on you. So the conversation continues all the time in between the broadcasts. And I hope that one day, it does happen with Slash. It does happen with Duff. If it doesn't, I'm trying to accept that now. But if you guys want to keep the faith for me, please feel free. If you tweet at them, if you see them being like, I think that would be a really great interview on Appetite for Distortion, because I was hoping that maybe by now my name would have a certain reputation of just being an honest, professional fan with a cool podcast. That's kind of what I would like to be, just an honest, professional fan that has a cool, legitimate, professional podcast. That's all. But in the meantime, we got Kerry King. And also on the way, some great interviews. Mark Weiss will be in the next episode, the acclaimed 80s rock photographer. That's going to be a great episode. He is a really nice guy. And then after that, Joe Bonamassa. I got another guitar legend. Didn't get Slash, but I got Joe. And we talk about Slash. We're going to talk about Slash. So stick around for those two episodes, those two interviews, and what's to come after that? You never know. Nothing is stopping me. I love this too much. Yes, the wind gets taken out of my sails at certain points, and I get bummed. I'm allowed to get bummed. I'm not going to pretend with you. And I'm not going to get, Slash and Duff. They're awesome. I don't even think it even gets to them. They have no idea. They're so big, and they've had so many beggars and hangers-on, pun intended, over the years. Like, I get it from their perspective. It's not worth it to them to do an interview that may go wrong. Or if they see Appetite for Distortion and they're like, oh, you know what? That's the one that Fernando said that the other guys couldn't do. So maybe if I don't want to piss off Fernando and do this, maybe I don't know. See, I'm thinking. I don't want to think all these conspiracy theories. I don't want to put fake news out there. But this is just me thinking and daydreaming and talking to you in a microphone. And also you, baby brownstone, right? Harrison Rex. Harrison. One day he's going to say, I swore he said dad the other day, I think. But we can't tell. It's like the mumbling, ma, 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 da, 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 maybe. But I'll go, say mommy, say daddy, say Axel, Slash. Can you say Slash? He's just looking at me. He's so handsome. One of these days. So anyway, and I still can't get over that person that thought I'm using him for clicks. I'm using my baby because I love him. Because I love him so much, and he's going to have all these things to look up to. Look back at all these videos of him with rock stars later on. Amazing. Anyway, now I digress. Now I got to go. Because he's looking at me with like those I just pooped eyes. All right, that was TMI. Now I told you too much. Oh, and if you would like to contribute to what I call the Baby Brownstone Heart School Fund, just go to our new website, afdpod.com. You can join our Patreon. You can make one-off donations. And it's what I tell my wife. Everything, all the money I make now just goes towards him. So it's just a nice little clever name. Instead of just saying, hey, donate to my PayPal or Patreon, just know it goes to Harrison. Everything goes to Harrison. And yes, I guess some, of course, will go back into the podcast itself, which ultimately goes back to you. So aftpod.com. In between the broadcasts, I posting pictures of the day and photos of the week, and obviously all the socials. That's where the conversation continues in between the broadcasts. So that does it for this episode of Appetite for Distortion. When will we see the next one? In the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it